Hi there, good morning everyone. Today is a special Live with Ralia format as we'll be talking about retail in general and the importance of retail transformation. I will be chatting with Ian Scott and we'll be talking about all of these details. However, with Ian, we'll be concentrating on a customer-centric approach to dealing with retail and how brands should be focusing on maybe this approach in these uncertain or turbulent environments to thrive, to survive, and to continue. So I will be joining Ian in a few. Please don't hesitate to come back to us with any comments or questions. For those who join later or who cannot continue watching the entire session, as usual, we'll be uploading this chat on IGTV and later on YouTube. So you can access at your own pace these live chats. So let me invite in Ian to start this beautiful conversation. Waving for everyone who joined us, who just joined us. Hi, Ian. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And thank you for meeting me and welcome to Instagram and to your Instagram debut.
Thank you. Yes, I've been posting on Instagram a lot, but I've never done a live, so I'm looking forward. Thanks for...
That's perfect. I think it's a beautiful format and it's allowing us to connect easily with many professionals around the world to be able to join in these nice, refreshing and rich conversations. But I'm going to leave the floor entirely to you today, and I'm going to start asking you like so many questions about retail and retail transformation. But Ian, consumer behavior had always been an intrigue and a fascination to you. Why?
I've worked in and around different elements of marketing my whole career, and I was originally in business to business, where you're working with people in the supply chain. And the moment I started in retail, I was sort of fascinated because it's that final point where all of the other marketing and advertising either works or doesn't. It's the point where the customer puts their money on the table and buys the product. And I love that immediacy of working out and understanding whether what you've done helps or makes a difference. But I was also completely fascinated with the sort of half science, half art aspect of retail, where the creativity makes a difference, but a serious understanding of the mechanics and how people behave also contribute to it as well.
And would you believe that most of us retailers would have a misconception of what we think could work and what would actually work? I mean, do you think that it's really important to go to the customer level in order to see how our strategies are being implemented and if they are really working?
Absolutely. I think if you don't understand your customer, then at best you're guessing. You know, some of the best brands just understand their customer. And I think if you have that, and that can sometimes just be a gut instinct, but with other people as well, it's data, insight, or just experience led as well. And the moment you understand your customer, you need to work back from that point by understanding what they like, how they want to engage, how they want to buy. And you need to sense check every activity against that principle. You know, will the customer engage? Will the customer buy? If not, then why are you doing it? And that should be the central point. And you see companies like Nike just understand it and they pivot everything around their consumer and the way they want to engage.
But however, Ian, the importance of customer centricity is key in the success of retail. We see, on the other hand, that many brands did not understand this yet, and they're not working from a customer-centric point of view. Will they be able to survive?
Um, there may be some that do. I think the challenge right now with the pandemic is it's squeezed retail. And we've seen a lot of companies that were maybe not financially strong have already gone out of business. So it was just an external pressure that they couldn't afford to sort of ride through. And then there are other brands who are maybe in a strong position, but perhaps don't have that customer-centric approach. And as we're sort of approaching the first year of the pandemic, I say the first year because I think there may be another one to go before we're fully through it. You're then going to see the ones that may have been in a strong position, but those reserves will have gone. For certain, others have flourished, to be fair, online. So it's not a universal thing. But we're going to see now that there are a lot of people who are looking to try and make a difference. And if you don't really understand the customer, and also importantly, the shift in what's happening with the customer because of the pandemic, then you're going to get minimized engagement. We have a lot of online now. There's a huge growth in online. I'm always say skeptical is a strong word, but I always feel that this sort of adulation around online is a little bit misplaced purely because the shops are closed. The governments have closed shops. So we have a false environment at the moment. Of course, we're all online because we're not allowed to go to the shops. So we can't look at the data from the last 6 to 9 months to champion online and this is what's going to be happening, because it's only when the virus, and most importantly, the fear of the virus have gone, that you will actually see true behavior. And we've certainly seen in Asia where they're ahead of the curve and handling this and moving forward. So they're not in lockdown mode in a lot of the countries, and people are allowed back into stores. And the Chinese have come up with this wonderful phrase, a categorization of revenge shoppers. So these are people going, I've been stuck in my house for months. I am now going to go out and I'm going to go to the shops and I'm going to go to the hairdresser and I'm going to go to the beach and I'm going to go to restaurants because they've been denied these pleasures. And I think one of the fundamental aspects here that we need to understand is that humans are social creatures. Mm-hmm. It is built into us. And I have a very clever friend who has a wonderful phrase saying, 40 years of the internet cannot overcome 2,000 years of genetic engineering. That's why we go to a pub and a restaurant when we can eat and drink for a fraction of the price at home. The different element is the social interaction. And that's where physical shopping also plays a big part. Yes, it's to get product and it's to go and try out brands, but it's social. How many of us go, well, let's go to the shopping mall today, and there's no specific buying mission in mind. It's let's go and have a look. And I've done that. Go out with a family. You can go there all day. You can have something to eat. You can even, get entertainment in the evening. And you go and look around and window shop. And even if you don't buy anything, it doesn't feel like a failure. And so that's this fundamental aspect of the social side of human interaction. You then couple that with the functional aspect of physical stores, and what it offers is touch and feel and experience that online can't offer. The physical handling of the product, but also the physical interaction with the brand and the communication and experiences it wants to deliver as well.
And hence many talks about omni-channel experiences and the management of that. But I would like to raise a point with you. For the past year, since online had picked up a lot, are brands making mistakes by gambling more or reshifting their processes into injecting more and more online retail operations and disregarding a little bit the physical operation? I mean, how could we prepare for the normal retail life of coming back? There has been so many talks, and are retailers now having like a blurred vision of what should I do?
I think it depends on different sectors. We've seen grocery and DIY fare very well. I always find it quite intriguing that grocery sales have gone through the roof because we've always needed to eat. Now, are we eating more now, or are we storing food? I'm not quite sure why those sales have picked up as much, because to me that's a constant everyday requirement. DIY is easier to understand. You have this sort of stereotypical scenario where people are on furlough, staying at home, and then you've got the wife turning to the husband going, right, you can now paint that fence you've been promising to do for years. And I know that's very much a stereotype, but there are a lot of different scenarios where you're at home, and even though you're on furlough and possibly not earning as much as you were before, your overheads are lower, so your disposable income is not necessarily in decline. For some people, they even have a higher disposable income, so that they're able to do these projects at home. You know, and I moved house just before the pandemic hit and the lockdown hit. So I had a lot of things to do around my new house.
You exercised your manual capabilities.
I learned them. Anyone that knows me would stand back if I ever put a shelf up. My shelves stay up now and they're almost level, so I view that as progress. But yeah, you know, you go into those stores and the paint category in particular was just empty. Yeah. You know, because people were decorating rooms, painting the fences in the garden, you know, and it was a category that they couldn't cope. You know, you had this really sudden quick shift. So you found that getting stock in wasn't able to keep up with the demand. But then as you come back to your question as well, sorry, I do diversify with my conversations. But, you know, the online is, you can see that there's been massive growth of online, and some brands have struggled to cope with that influx. You know, their systems weren't set up, but then also the ability to process orders and deliver them. You know, not every experience online has been enjoyable. One, because some people don't want to do it online, and others because the online system has been struggling to cope. But, you know, you've seen this particularly with the DIY sector, the Kingfisher Group, that own a number of different DIY brands across Europe. You know, they were talking about this growth. But my view is that growth may be temporary because we have this artificial staying at home that is prompting activity. So, you know, there are two routes here. One is they go, well, we're going to invest in this, but you've got to make sure the experience and the offer and the engagement is really good now to keep these new curious customers. Yeah. You know, otherwise it's going to be dangerous to go, yes, we've grown 20% this year, and then they have this massive investment in 20% growth, and then suddenly we all go back to work and we stop painting the fences and decorating the rooms. So they've massively invested in something that is no longer there. And it's not because they failed, it's because these unique behavioral habits that we have during the pandemic and lockdown have temporarily increased engagement. So it's up to them. We have this big audience now. They've got to engage them and give them a reason to stay. And that needs to happen now, not in the next 6 to 12 months.
Right. And customers have had a stronger voice. I think social media helped a lot. It has been helping a lot. And through the pandemic, they were excessively using, I think, all of these sites, conversing together, talking, giving their opinion, etc. I mean, does this customer voice has affected also brands? Have brands become more attentive to what customers are saying?
I think so, and they certainly should be. You know, even before the pandemic, we were seeing that social media is this sort of double-edged sword for brands and retailers. It gives quick, easy, relatively inexpensive access to your customers. But if you get it wrong, you get a very quick, loud, dissenting voice that can bite back at you as well. And you can't control that as much as you can with other elements of marketing, because it has this free voice and it will span around the world. So we've seen brands that get it absolutely right, and the word spreads really quickly. And then there are others. I mean, I'm thinking of the Peloton advert last year, which was deemed, you know, very insensitive, you know, about this man buying his wife a bike to get fit, and she already looked like a supermodel, you know. I mean, the brand survived it, but the backlash was on instant and on social media and massive. So you have to be careful with certain elements of that. You know, you get that wrong and you're condemned temporarily, to be fair. You know, it'd be interesting to see how long the damage of those sort of things follow through, because Peloton seemed to have ridden that out quite well. But I think before the pandemic, we always had this situation where customers now have the world in their hand, literally, because of the phone. You know, so we've seen in physical stores, people will go in and try the experience and then stand there in front of the sales assistant on their phone and buy it online for a cheaper price. Now, for the brand, that's not a problem. You know, the lady that runs Nike Town in London said to me, you know, someone spends an hour trying on different sort of footwear and then stands in front of me and buys it on Amazon. I don't mind, because my job is to facilitate the sale of the product, not put the money in the till in my store. Now, using that analogy, you know, a sports retailer who is a middleman doesn't want you to do that. So we're seeing this sort of shift in that we as customers have the power of instant access in our hand all the time. So you have to really understand that you can't, you know, 30, 40 years ago, say, you know, stores could trick people into buying products. You know, they could make bold statements and use that instinct of influencing human behavior. But we can literally stand there in the store and counteract that with a global knowledge of what's going on. And I think that's not a pandemic thing. That's just how the world exists now, and sort of brands and retailers need to understand.
Yeah, and retail has been shifting. I mean, as you have highlighted the case of Nike, on the importance of the theatrics, developing important or giving or allocating an important weight on shopping experiences. I mean, we want to give people a reason to go to our stores and feel something new, etc. However, does this invite brands to rethink also their channels? I mean, do we want to acquire vertically, or we want to acquire more channels to secure that even if the customer doesn't want to buy from our stores, he's buying from elsewhere, but this elsewhere is ours? I mean, can we do that?
I think so, yes. We've seen the vertical sort of buying of supply chain. Sometimes it's controlling margin, other times it's just controlling, you know, the supply of the product and the quality as well. And then moving across the different channels as well. We're seeing that because customers want to access the brand or the experience on their own terms. So you need to be able to offer all of those experiences consistently across every channel, so that they will seamlessly bounce around. You know, I think moving forward, the physical store, which has traditionally been the end of the process where you go and collect the product, you know, that's been changing over the last 20 years. We might find now people will start the journey. They may go in the store to experience, then go home, sit on their sofa and on their phone using the app, buy the product. So you now have, you know, you have the website, you have apps, you have social media, you have experiential, you have stores, all of these different channels. They all need to facilitate that sale. So you have what I call symbiotic retail, where you're going to have all of these working consistently, and you're going, there you go, you can access this any way you want. The message is the same, the product range is the same, the price is the same, which you can't do anymore. You can't do discounted online because it just alienates the customer. And make it as easy. Now, again, this comes back to the first comment about consumer-centric. This is how the customer wants to engage with you. So just remove as many frictions as possible so that they can buy your product as easily as they want to do it.
Right. I mean, these new like keywords we're using, like symbiotic, frictionless or seamless shopping, is very important to do. However, are young brands or newly establishing brands able to deliver these types of experiences? I mean, are we going to be facing some kind of discrepancy between all of these giants who have already established their places on the market between online, offline, etc., and those new types of brands who don't have the means, the capital, the funds, the experience, and all of these things to develop like brands who could cater to these customers' needs, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because I did a massive study on Nike just before Christmas and really analyzing everything. And I knew quite a bit about Nike, but it was really interesting to delve in. And I had wonderful support from a senior Nike person who helped me tie it all together. And a lot of people have said to me, well, that's all right for Nike. You know, their turnover is nearly $40 billion a year. But I went, no, the principle is scalable. It's understand your customer and be consistent in your message. Now, they can develop a house of innovation store for millions of dollars with amazing tech in, but that's just scaling up that understanding to fit that brand. You know, if you're a mom and pop store, to use the stereotype, you know, a one store person, you can still take those principles. You can use Facebook Live, you know, you can have interaction in your window or QR codes or links to your social media so that when your shop is shut, there's still engagement on that level. And so that principle is a scalable solution. It's understand your customer and deliver your message, but you do it within your own budget. You know, and you've seen some wonderful activities from, you know, independent retailers at the moment that have pivoted because their physical store is closed. And they're evolving. You know, there are people that have developed a whole new revenue stream at a higher level than they had with their store through, like I say, Facebook and Instagram and other social media channels. And there is also this interest in buying local to support. You know, one of the positives that has come out of the last year is that a lot of people are more considerate. And I found this, I've been denied physical interaction, but online there's been a massive, I mean, you and I are having this conversation now because of the power of social media and LinkedIn. So, you know, you can see this. And so there is a groundswell of, you know, considerate activity, keeping local, contacting with more people. So you can leverage that.
Yeah.
If you have a physical store, a small physical store, it is a local catchment area that you're selling to anyway. So work within that on the social media side.
And I was wondering, but correct me if I'm wrong, I've been noticing that brands are going back to simple forms of retail. At a certain point during the last decade, we were going through these formatted retail transactions. I go to a store, there are several standards, etc. But now things have become more natural. I could just like text someone, tell them I like their shirt. Would you be able to sell it to me for X? I buy it, we're happy. We're going through these like transactions that are social through WhatsApp, through Facebook and Instagram, as you said. Sometimes we are going through lots of sessions of social streaming, like someone opening their camera from the back of the room, showing some items to customers, bidding on that. I mean, is there also a return towards a simpler form of retail?
I think there is in certain areas. I agree. We've seen simple things like live streaming coming through where people are walking around their physical space, you know,
Yes.
with a camera and showing people. Brompton Cycles in the UK do this, and you book it, and so they will walk you around the store and have a look. We've seen certainly in fashion a big growth in the upcycling side. You know, people like Patagonia and North Face are reconstituting old products.
Yes.
You know, fashion is one of the worst polluters. You know, I did some research for a presentation recently, and the carbon footprint for fashion is worse than the airline and shipping industries combined. It's quite scary.
Scary.
So you see, yeah, you're seeing this shift now, though. So you're seeing H&M are working with Lee on a denim, sustainable denim collaboration at the moment. We're seeing companies like Patagonia really introducing a recycled and upcycled offer. And a good friend of mine, Jeremy C, who's based in Singapore, posted just yesterday about swapping fashion stores. So coming back to the barter idea, where you bring in an old product and someone else has a new product and you swap, you know, and that's back to the most simple, basic form of barter retail. So we're seeing a lot of this. My only concern is it will die out. You know, when we get out of the pandemic, we may just revert back to our old way. And I do hope some of these wonderful new ideas do last the test of time. You know, I've seen a number of retailers offer this upcycled, will sell reconstituted product. And it's normally a 1 month trial in the flagship store to get PR, you know, and I've constantly said, but no, this needs to be a permanent category. And I think Patagonia are moving that way, which doesn't surprise me because Patagonia are one of the most conscientious retailers out there. You know, we need a permanent category in every store and on your website to really drive this forward. And it can still be profitable. People will invest in that because they feel it's the right thing to do.
And there are, I think, a new wave of consumers who are more conscious, who are willing to consume more responsibly. But we hope, as you said, that these could sustain the business and they are big enough in number to help us keep the demand going for these. I mean, in France, we had many applications where you can just they sell you the idea of like get rid of your old items. If you don't want to use them anymore, just buy them. And we're all doing that. I mean, I have been going through that process because it's really interesting. Why should I get rid of something if someone else might need it or likes it? And why not get an item that I like from someone else? But the circular economy is working more in fashion and I think vintagey luxury types of items like bags and shoes, etc. And moreover, we're seeing that there's a strong return of all of these shops like Oxfam in the UK, for example, where you can just go and give in some items that could be sold and resold, right? Did the pandemic resurface different retail formats that were dying before or were going towards extinction?
I think there are some that are coming through like that. I think it's through inspiration or desperation sometimes, that we can come
Right.
up with our best ideas. And yes, I mean, we call them charity shops here in the UK, and there are a number of charities that operate them where you send your old clothes through, and I've done that a number of times.
Hmm.
It's interesting to see big brands are starting to sort of bring in that principle as well. And coming back to your first comment there, yes, this is what I call social conscience, where we're more considerate about the environment in general. What we're finding now is, a lot of surveys are saying 70% of people will reconsider who they buy from based on their ethical values. I think in reality, I'm trying to do some work at the moment on the reality of what we actually do against what we say, because there
Yeah.
is a discrepancy. I read a report somewhere that 17% of us actually act on it, not 70, but still it's 17 and it's growing.
Yeah.
And what you're finding now is brands are realizing they cannot afford not to do this.
Yes.
Before it was, oh, this would be a nice bit of PR. No, no, no. This is affecting the bottom line now because you will lose sales. And we're seeing big companies like Unilever really driving their social responsibility aspect. And they have sold some brands in their portfolio because they have claimed that even though they're profitable, we cannot adapt them to meet our new sustainable objectives. Now,
Hmm.
whether it's true or not, we don't know. But what you're seeing there is they're making a big noise about doing the right thing. And these, again, we're coming back to the customer. If customers are saying, I might not buy from you, that's a bigger motivator than the need to do the right thing, because a lot of these companies are responsible to shareholders. You have to deliver a profit every quarter. So if you're going to lose sales because you're not doing this, then that's a bad thing. And then you're going to get, called to account by the people that own you as well.
Yeah. And we're going back now to the idea of the high street and how businesses are shifting. Now, everyone is getting really scared because the moment will come when many brands will shut their businesses. We have seen like two great examples in the UK with Topshop, for example. All of these empty spaces, are they going to forever change our high street?
This is one I've got very involved in recently, actually, because I think we're in a position where I call it almost like a perfect storm. To me, there are three key parties that are involved in high street retail. So you have the retailers that rent space, you have the landlords that own the space, and then you have the government that charge the taxes. All three are suffering at the moment.
Yeah.
So this is a unique situation where everyone who has a vested interest is suffering and wants to find a way to make it work. If you only got one or two of them interested, it often falls down. So I think this is an opportunity. We're having lots of shops closing. I read a report last week that maybe Oxford Street in London, there may be up to 20% of the stores closed by the end of the
Yeah.
year. And that's one of the most famous shopping streets in the world. So they're saying, what are we going to do? Now, on the other side, there is a £150 million budget allocated to the development of Oxford Street. So at the time when suffering, there is actually a budget to do something different. And there have been conversations around this. A couple of years ago, they were going to do it, and then it was stopped, and now it's back on the table. Personally, I think we should pedestrianise a street like Oxford Street. And I immediately start thinking of Las Ramblas in Barcelona, where, you have this wonderful street, pickpockets aside, where, you have food and art and demonstrations and the shops, and I sat there thinking about this, why is the centre of our city just about shops? Why does it have to be just rows and rows of shops in that central focal point street? I was just reading this morning that in Coventry in the UK, the former IKEA store is going to be changed into an art centre.
Right.
We could start having why can't you have accommodation on Oxford Street? People want to be in the centre. Why can't you have apartments there? Art centres, other, performance and engagement. And if you pedestrianise Oxford Street, you could have these wonderful displays and kiosks all the way along there, and it will become a community focal point, not a shopping focal point.
Yes.
If the shops can't fill it, then let's fill it with other spaces. We've had over decades now, people moving out of city centres. So we're in the suburbs, on the edge of cities, or in villages further away. Why can't we create and reinvent the centre of the city So it does have shops, but it has all the other aspects, so we can live in the centre of the city. You know, there are a few areas, say in London, where you can live in the centre, and it costs millions. But why don't you create an environment where you just have this communal focal point, not a shopping focal point?
Right.
You know, just yesterday again, I was reading that there is plans to build a big hill at the end of Oxford Street by Marble Arch. And it was referenced in this budget. And I'm not sure building a big hill is what we necessarily need. But to be fair, I'd need to learn more about that. But at least there is some thinking around this. So, and again, we see with the landlords, you know, that in the UK, certainly there's a tradition that they charge rent on a quarterly basis. So every 3 months, the retailers have to pay. So it's big lumps of money. And there's been a call for a long time to actually, you know, sort of spread out costs. But I've been reading about some landlords that are actually charging percentage of sales now. So they will take 10% of the sales of the store. So they're sort of in it with the retailer as well.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting sort of situation as well, but the new ways of working on that model.
Ian, I'm curious also to look at these big spaces. Like Oxford Street is also known for these big spaces where retailers accommodate like full concepts, sometimes flagship stores, etc. Most of the times we say, or we tend to say, empty spaces are good opportunities to develop like pop-up store concepts or temporary shops, etc. However, when a brand wants to come into a temporary location, it might not be able to fill in all of these retail spaces available. Yeah. I'm curious because this is also an area of research that I work on. Are we, first of all, willing in high streets such as Oxford Street, for example, to give in our spaces for temporary locations? And second, in light of what you have discussed, are we also able to develop more concepts that are comprehensive and that could include stores that sell products, have like small restaurants, etc.? I mean, it had started somehow to develop in areas, but didn't pick up a lot. Would this be able to happen somehow in light of what you have been saying?
I hope so. I mean, using Oxford Street as our example again, you know, we've had some big department stores go. You know, Debenhams has gone, House of Fraser is sort of being reconstituted at the moment. John Lewis is still there, although they're struggling as well. And then you have the famous Topshop store at Oxford Circus, which may or may not be retained by ourselves. So these places, and again, I've read about how, you know, these big spaces can be reused in different ways. There's talks of hospitals being created, so you have very localized sort of central hospital activities, or even farming areas for growing of produce. And we're seeing some lovely ideas about, you know, rethinking space. There's a company in the UK called Sook, S-O-O-K, who are taking over certain spaces in cities. And it's not a conventional pop-up, so you don't book it for 2 weeks. You book it for time of day. And they've talked about how, you know, 7:30 till 9 in the morning, a yoga teacher might use it because they will have passing traffic on the way into the office. So you can go and have a yoga session before you work. You know, it could be an art gallery in the afternoon, and on a Sunday it may be different. And I love that because you can really localize and focus your offer at the right time of day and day of week for your target audience. And I love this idea, and they're doing some wonderful things. You can remote upload. They've got companies in South Africa that are using the space, and they're sat at their desks in Cape Town, uploading the content onto the screen, and everything's done for them. They never even have to leave South Africa to have a presence in central London. And I like that creative thinking. And then also there's a company called Situ Live, who are looking at creating experiential events where they take over a space and have a whole number of brands work together to do demonstrations. And I jokingly comment on LinkedIn the other day, you know, about maybe we should start merging this. So if you have, for example, a company that sells soup, why don't they do a venture with people that make crockery and soup bowls? And suddenly you can get a table company involved, so you can place it on the table, and you can even then have a dishwasher company involved as well. I mean, it's an extreme example, but the idea is you have all of these complementary brands.
Logical collaborations, of course.
Logical collaboration. And so I think there's opportunities to start thinking like that, and there are a few companies that are pushing these ideas and bringing them.
Yeah. I think there was a little comment here. Someone says that there needs to be a clear plan for likes of Oxford Street, or more will be depart, I fear. Yeah, I think,
I agree.
yeah,
You know, you also have very high rent in these big places as well, so the cost of entry is high. Although ironically, at the edges of Oxford Street, we're seeing more and more of these sort of souvenir shops
yeah,
selling the cheap sort of touristy stuff. And someone
right.
said to me when I was doing a retail safari around London, someone said, why are they there? They can't afford it. I went, well, they make margins that Next and Marks and Spencer's could only dream about. They buy something for 50 pence and sell it for £10.
Right.
So their margin is probably the best margin on the whole of Oxford Street. But, you know, you're seeing that adaptation. It is a very high cost of entry. So again, that may need to be revisited as well.
Yeah, I mean, it joins a little bit somehow what we've been trying to talk about. For smaller brands, existing from time to time might be more beneficial and more realistic to the growth and development of brands. And it comes and joins a little bit what we want today as consumers. Just like shopping has to be a relevant part of our day, and it doesn't have to be like this stressful task that is very utilitarian and very formatted. We're going into this era of retail where things have to become integrated and simpler, and they should easily or seamlessly take part of our journey. Now, in your opinion, Ian, and throughout all of these researches that you have been doing, what do you think the high street should do in order to face that turbulent time, that uncertain time, and to thrive and survive?
Well, I think there are two things. One, there's more flexibility on how physical space is rented and used. And that needs to, again, coming back to how the government charge taxes, how landlords charge rent, how accessible it is. So I think we're going to see more fluidity in spaces. And we're seeing, you know, big retailers like Selfridges, they created a space where smaller startups can showcase their products. So you imagine being a startup and having space in Selfridges, you know, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So I think that's great because you're seeing some of these big traditional retailers championing and supporting small brands. I was just reading today that Sephora are launching a whole range of sort of new incubator type brands within their stores and on their platform. And all of them have diversity based owners, you know, so people are starting to look at these sort of niche areas and support them. And I think that will make a big difference. But also it's coming back to these sort of temporary spaces that companies like Souk and Situ Live are working on, where it gives you a small step into the space. I think Beta in the US do this as well, where they'll curate a space, you can use it, and they offer all of the back office support. And I think that's a great way because, you know, even the great online giant Amazon has bought into physical space because they understand, you know, they bought Whole Foods and they launched their Amazon Go stores and their bookstores because no, you can't ignore the physical space. You know, before the pandemic, 83% of all global retail sales were in a physical store. That's a huge category to write off. So I think that's what we need is the adaptive ability for brands to utilize the space. And I think that's again driven through the necessity. There's a lot of empty space. So landlords will be, how can I make this space work? And therefore they may be more receptive to these smaller people that before didn't have the opportunity or the budget to do it.
Right. And if I may ask, do you have any visibility with regards to the situation and luxury brands? Are they affected by this pandemic? Are they affected by the fact that customers might be using more online transactions, or are they also going to shift their retail spaces to accommodate this new customer or his needs?
I think it's certainly in the luxury sector that there is a lot of shifting. You know, it's easy just to assume there's some big lumbering giant, but they're proving to be very agile. We've seen how Burberry have done this. You know, they opened a store in China a few months ago, and it's driven through WeChat, which is the app that everyone uses in China. And so WeChat actually enhances the experience in the store. And it's again, this proper symbiotic relationship. As you walk around the store, you use the phone, it'll unlock offers. You can book a place in the restaurant. You can learn more about products. So you can stand there and use the Burberry, mini program within WeChat to actually make purchases while you're in the store. So I think it's one of those wonderful opportunities there where you can do that. Longcom, I know, developed a virtual store, and they were using high-profile personalities to showcase the products on the virtual store as well. So we're seeing that sector is shifting quite rapidly and adapting to it, and more than I expected them to. I must admit, I had this preconceived idea that they would sit there in their big global flagships, on the Champs-Elysees and Oxford Street and Fifth Avenue. But they're not. They're pivoting and moving really quickly as well.
And thank you, Ian. And to wrap up these major ideas that we were talking about, what can we say with regards to the shifting retail environment, firstly from the customer side and secondly from the brand side?
I suppose it comes back to the first things we were saying. It needs to be frictionless. You've got to make it easy for the customer to engage. You can persuade and make them aware of things, but it's very much consumers are in control of retail now. They have too much knowledge. So you just need to make it easy for them to understand what's going on. And then the retailers need to then look at, as I say, this symbiotic element. You need to make sure that all of your tools are working in harmony, completely focused on what's easy for them. And by facilitating that, it works. And you see the likes of Nike and Apple and Burberry now, they really understand how they can tap into what the customers want while still making it viable and profitable for them as well. And that's certainly the way forward. And that's not a pandemic thing. That's just how the world is going in retail.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Ian. I mean, it's always very interesting to discuss these points because there are lots of questions going on, and we are looking into many interpretations of many studies, looking at the situation and maybe making sense out of it to help retailers shift or refocus their strategies. I think there's another little comment. It's why, in my view, JD are so successful.
Is that the Chinese JD or the UK JD Sport? I'm not sure which one referring to, but certainly JD in China are phenomenally successful, and you've seen how they've adapted and tried new ideas. And if it's JD Sport in the UK, then yes, likewise, they're a very progressive company that are really understanding their customer. I know they're doing some really interesting work at the moment to really tap into how they communicate and how people respond to that as well.
UK.
They're very good.
Having said that, Ian, it's really always interesting to see how in many areas with many cultures, different markets, there are different momentums picking up in retail. Sometimes countries look at certain retail formats more than the others. In some other countries, retail formats make more sense and less in the others. I mean, there is always this cultural aspect that is important, and I believe if customers are having a greater say and an important weight in the decisions, retail decisions, I mean, cultures and environments will play a key role in the development of retail, right?
Absolutely. You can't escape that those environments are pleasurable. We are born as emotional creatures. If you think all babies do is laugh and cry, all our other behaviors are learned through sort of social education. So it comes back to that. We are all victims of emotional impulse purchases that we realize afterwards we maybe didn't need to buy. And that's what keeps retail profitable. I think half the retailers have got a business if we just became functional, pragmatic shoppers. Right. And there is more there. Amazon is all about convenience and availability. It's an easy thing to do. It's frictionless. Whereas a physical store, you have to invest your time to go, but there are more emotional rewards when you go there. You can sit there and enjoy the experience, immerse yourself physically in it. I think of the Microsoft store in Oxford Street. They have a room that's just full of Xboxes. and I stupidly took my kids in there and I had to prise their fingers off the door frame to get them out afterwards. And there was nothing about selling. There was no hard sell. There was just all these games, all these sofas and seats, and you just sit there and play games,
Yes,
and
yes.
and those are wonderful things. I was so pleased to see that, because it was just, well, I wasn't with my children, I wasn't pleased to see it, but when I was visiting as a retail person, observing, it's one of those immersive things. And you come back and you go, well, that's try before you buy, but it's also just enjoying the brand. And I think that's one of the big growth areas that we're going to see moving forward.
Right. Thank you, Ian. I mean, the conversation would never end, but I have lots of questions all the time. Every time you talk about something, I have my eyes like going focusing. Ian, thank you so much. I think we've done a good round discussing many things. This is Jeremy, waving at you, Jeremy.
I was talking about you just before. Nice to see you. Just as we finished, perfect timing.
And I wanted to tell you, I didn't want to cut you, that we had a very beautiful live discussion with Jeremy a couple of months ago, and we've also discussed many aspects of retail, and we've looked at pop-up and ephemeral retail. Thank you so much, Jeremy and Ian and everyone who's been watching us. Ian, would you like to add anything else to the conversation that we haven't discussed?
Well, yeah, the only thing I would say is this is one of the most exciting times for retail. Maybe not if you're a legacy retailer with 500 stores and big leases and not sure what to do. But the shift here, this is unique. There is no case study existing, behavioral data about what we should do. And it's a real chance to reinvent how we properly do retail, particularly in the physical side, because it has suffered most. But it's how they work. So I can't wait to see what is going to be happening in the next couple of years, because retail does have to take a good hard look at itself, and there will be case studies about the next couple of years for centuries to come, I think.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ian, for your time, for this beautiful conversation and all of these insights. And hopefully we meet up soon with other discussions and maybe fruitful projects. Just to thank everyone who had watched us and those who joined a bit later. The session will be available on IGTV and later on YouTube. So I think someone asked on LinkedIn earlier this morning. So there is going to be a direct replay of this. And thank you everyone for joining in. And thank you so much, Ian, for this beautiful conversation. And good luck with all of your projects.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation. Hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, soon. And I think you had a positive experience on this Instagram debut, right?
Yes, it went really well. It's because I wasn't in charge of setting it up. I was quite happy to let you get the technology wrong. I'm sure it will go wrong if I did it myself.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, and have a nice morning.
And you. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.